The clock ticked louder than it should have, each second a hammer against Elliot's chest. His father's voice, low and trembling, cut through the hum of the TV. Hurry, before Mom gets back. Son. In that moment, the world Elliot knew, the one built on baseball games, awkward family dinners, and his father's stoic silences, crumbled into something raw, unguarded, and terrifyingly real. Elliot was 17, lanky, with hazel eyes that always seemed to search for answers. He sat on the edge of the couch in their modest Virginia home, the kind with creaky floors and a fridge plastered with old report cards. His dad, David, was across from him, a man of 45 whose calloused hands had fixed cars and built tree houses, but now fidgeted with a crumpled piece of paper. The living room, bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, felt like a stage for a confession neither was ready for. Dad, what's going on? Elliot's voice cracked, betraying the bravado he tried to muster. His heart raced, not just from the secrecy, but from the way his father's eyes, blue and heavy with something unspoken, locked onto his. David leaned forward, his flannel shirt stretching across his broad shoulders, and whispered again, "We don't have much time." Elliot's mind spiraled. Was it money? Was Dad sick? The weight of the unknown pressed against his ribs. He'd always seen his father as a fortress, unyielding, practical, the man who taught him how to throw a curveball and change a tire. But tonight, David's face was a map of cracks, each line telling a story Elliot had never been allowed to read. The paper in David's hand trembled as he slid it across the coffee table. "Read it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elliot hesitated, his fingers brushing the worn edges. It wasn't a bill or a medical report, it was a letter, handwritten, the ink smudged in places as if tears had fallen on it. The first line hit like a punch. "I've been lying to you. To your mom. To myself." Elliot's breath caught. He glanced up, meeting his father's gaze, and saw something he'd never seen before: fear. Not the kind from a late-night horror flick, but the kind that comes from standing on the edge of truth, knowing it could shatter everything. "Dad, what is this?" he asked, his voice small, like he was 10 again, asking why the sky was blue. David ran a hand through his graying hair, his jaw tight. "I wrote it years ago. Never thought I'd show it to anyone, least of all you." He paused, his eyes darting to the clock. "Your mom's at her book club. We've got maybe an hour." Elliot's world tilted. His mom, Sarah, was the glue of their family. Her laughter filled the house. Her rules kept it standing. She'd be back soon, her purse jingling with keys. Oblivious to whatever this was, Elliot unfolded the letter fully, his hands shaking. The words blurred at first, but as he read, they sharpened into a blade. "I've always loved men. I've hidden it my whole life." The room spun. Elliot's heart pounded in his ears, drowning out the clock. His dad was gay. The man who'd coached his little league team, who'd argued with Mom over paint colors for the garage, who'd never once hinted at this. Elliot's mind raced through memories, searching for clues he'd missed. But all he found was confusion and a strange, aching empathy. "Say something," David pleaded, his voice raw. "Please." Elliot's mouth opened, but no words came. He wanted to ask why, how, when, but all he could manage was, "Does Mom know?" The question hung heavy, like smoke in the air. David shook his head, his eyes glistening. "No. And I don't know how to tell her. I don't even know if I can." He leaned back, his hands covering his face. "I've spent 30 years burying this, Elliot. 30 years pretending to be someone I'm not. But I can't anymore. Not with you." The weight of those words settled into Elliot's bones. He'd always thought he knew his dad, every quirk, every habit, But this was a stranger sitting across from him, yet somehow more real than the man he'd grown up with. Elliot's own secret, the one he'd buried deep, clawed its way to the surface. He'd been questioning his own feelings for months. The way his heart raced around his best friend, Jamie. The way he couldn't stop staring at the curve of his smile. "Dad," Elliot started, his voice barely a whisper. I think I might be," the words caught in his throat. Too heavy to speak. But David's eyes softened. And for the first time, Elliot felt seen not as a son, but as a person with his own unspoken truths. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway cut through the moment like a knife. David's face paled. "She's back early," he whispered, panic lacing his voice. "Elliot, please, don't say anything. Not yet." Elliot nodded, his heart a tangle of fear and loyalty. He shoved the letter into his pocket, the weight of it burning against his thigh. As the front door creaked open, he realized this was only the Beganinga's secret shared, a bond reshaped, and a family teetering on the edge of truth. Sarah's keys jingled as she stepped inside, her voice bright and oblivious. "Elliot. David. I'm home." Book club ended early. Janet had a migraine. The normalcy of her tone felt like a betrayal to the storm raging in Elliot's chest. He glanced at his dad, whose face had snapped back into its usual mask stoic. Unreadable. David stood, brushing invisible lint from his jeans. "Hey, Hon," he called, his voice steady but hollow. "Want some tea?" It was a performance, one Elliot suddenly realized his dad had perfected over decades. Elliot's fingers curled around the letter in his pocket, its edges digging into his palm. He wanted to scream, to demand answers. But Sarah's smile stopped him. She was 42, with laugh lines that deepened when she teased him about his messy room. Tonight, she looked tired, her auburn hair slipping from its bun. But her warmth filled the room like always. How could she not know? How could she live with someone for 20 years and miss this? "I'm good," Sarah said, kicking off her shoes. "Elliot, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Her eyes narrowed, maternal instinct kicking in. "I'm fine," he lied, his voice too high. "Just tired." He stood, muttering something about homework, and fled to his room. The letter burned a hole in his pocket, but he didn't dare pull it out. Not yet. Upstairs, Elliot collapsed onto his bed, the glow of his phone casting shadows on the ceiling. He opened his texts, his thumb hovering over Jamie's name. Jamie, with his easy laugh and the way he made Elliot's stomach flip. They'd been friends since freshman year. Inseparable. But lately, Elliot's feelings had shifted into something he couldn't name or didn't want to. He typed, "Can we talk?" Then deleted it. What would he even say? Instead, he pulled out the letter. The words were raw, unguarded. "I fell in love once. Before your mom." His name was Michael. "We were 20, and I thought I could be myself. But my parents, they made it clear I'd lose everything." Elliot's heart ached. He pictured his dad young, scared, forced to choose between love and survival. The letter went on, detailing years of denial, of marrying Sarah to fix himself, of loving her but never fully being hers. Elliot's phone buzzed. A text from Jamie. "Yo? You good? Missed you at practice." Elliot's chest tightened. He wanted to tell Jamie everything, his dad's secret, his own confusion, but the words felt too big, too dangerous. Instead, he replied, "Yeah, just family stuff. Talk tomorrow." Downstairs, he heard his parents' voices, low and routine. Dishes clinked. The TV hummed. It was all so normal, yet so wrong. Elliot wondered how long his dad had carried this weight, how many nights he'd lain awake next to Sarah, trapped in a life he didn't fully belong to. And now, Elliot was part of it, complicit in a secret that could unravel everything. The next morning, the kitchen smelled of coffee and pancakes. Sarah's Saturday ritual. Elliot shuffled in, avoiding his dad's eyes. David was at the stove, flipping pancakes with a forced cheerfulness. "Morning, champ," he said, but his voice was strained, like a string about to snap. Sarah sipped her coffee, oblivious. "Elliot, you're coming to the community center tonight, right? They're doing that fundraiser for the youth shelter." Her passion for volunteering was infectious. But today, it felt like a reminder of the life they were all pretending to live. "Sure," Elliot mumbled, his mind elsewhere. He glanced at David, who gave a slight nod, a silent plea to keep quiet. The weight of the letter, still tucked in his jacket, felt heavier than ever. At school, Elliot couldn't focus. His history teacher droned on about the Civil War, but all he could think about was his dad's letter. During lunch, Jamie slid into the seat across from him, his dark hair falling into his eyes. "Dude, you're acting weird," Jamie said, tossing a fry at him. "Spill." Elliot's heart raced. He wanted to tell Jamie about his dad, about the feelings he couldn't shake but fear stopped him. "Just family stuff," he repeated, hating how weak it sounded. Jamie's eyes softened. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" His hand brushed Elliot's, lingering a second too long. The touch sent a jolt through Elliot, and he pulled back, his face burning. "Yeah," he managed, standing abruptly. "I gotta go." He fled to the bathroom, splashing water on his face. Staring at his reflection, he saw his dad's eyes staring back, scared, searching, hiding. He couldn't keep this secret forever, but he didn't know how to let it out without breaking everything. The community center was a blur of fairy lights and chatter, the fundraiser in full swing. Elliot stood by the punch table, his tie too tight, watching his mom work the room. Sarah was in her element, laughing with donors, her energy a stark contrast to the storm inside him. David was there too, shaking hands, playing the part of the supportive husband. But Elliot caught the way his dad's smile faltered when he thought no one was looking. The letter was still in Elliot's jacket, a constant reminder of the truth. He hadn't slept, replaying his dad's words, wrestling with his own. He scanned the crowd for Jamie, who'd promised to show up. When he spotted him leaning against a wall, his navy blazer slightly wrinkled. Elliot's heart did that stupid flip again. Jamie waved, and Elliot forced a smile, his palms sweaty. "You clean up nice," Jamie teased, joining him. "What's with the face, though? You look like you're at a funeral." Elliot laughed, but it came out brittle. Long week. He wanted to say more, to spill everything, but the words stuck. Jamie's presence was both a comfort and a complication, stirring feelings Elliot wasn't ready to face. Across the room, David caught Elliot's eye. He nodded toward the back door, a silent signal. Elliot's stomach dropped. "Be right back," he muttered to Jamie, weaving through the crowd. Outside, the air was cool, the parking lot quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. David was waiting, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "I shouldn't have put this on you," he said, his voice low. "It was selfish, but I couldn't keep lying to you." Elliot's throat tightened. "Why now, Dad? Why tell me it all?" Anger crept into his voice, surprising even himself. "You've been fine all these years, right? Why drag me into it?" David flinched, but his eyes didn't waver. "Because you're my son. Because I see you struggling. And I know what it's like to hide who you are." His voice broke. "I don't want you to live like I have." Elliot froze. Did his dad know? Had he seen the way Elliot looked at Jamie? The way he stumbled over his words? The idea that his secret wasn't so secret made his chest ache. "I'm not," he started. But David raised a hand. "You don't have to say it. Not yet. But I see you, Elliot. And I'm here." David's voice was soft, almost fragile. "I just wish I'd had someone when I was your age." The door creaked open, and Sarah's voice called out, "David. Elliot. You out here?" Panic flashed across David's face, and Elliot's heart raced. They stepped apart just as Sarah appeared, her brow furrowed. "What's going on? You two look like you're plotting something." David forced a laugh. "Just guy talk. Right, Elliot?" He shot Elliot a desperate look. "Yeah," Elliot said, his voice flat. "Guy talk." Sarah's smile returned, but her eyes lingered, sensing something off. She looped her arm through David's, pulling him back inside, leaving Elliot alone in the dark. Back at the fundraiser, Jamie found him again. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. "You're freaking me out." Elliot wanted to tell him. He wanted to say, "My dad's gay, and I think I might be too. And I'm terrified." But instead, he shrugged. "Family drama. You know how it is." Jamie didn't push, but his hand rested on Elliot's shoulder, warm and steady. "I'm here, man. Whenever you're ready." The words were simple, but they cracked something open in Elliot. A flicker of hope in the chaos. That night, Elliot lay awake, the letter on his nightstand. He thought about his dad's life, decades of hiding, of loving in secret. He thought about Jamie, about the way his touch felt like a lifeline. And he thought about his mom, blissfully unaware that her world was about to change. The weight of it all pressed down. But beneath it, a quiet resolve began to form. He couldn't keep running from himself, not when his dad had taken the first step. Sunday morning brought a tense quiet to the house. Sarah was at church, her absence a brief window for Elliot and David to talk. They sat at the kitchen table, coffee cups untouched, the letter between them like a loaded gun. Elliot's eyes traced the familiar handwriting, but he couldn't bring himself to read it again. "Not yet. I don't know how to do this, Dad," Elliot said finally, his voice raw. "How do you tell someone something that'll break their heart?" David's face crumpled. "I don't know either. I've been asking myself that for 20 years. He leaned forward, his hands clasped tight. "Your mom, she's everything to me. But she deserves the truth. And so do I." Elliot's chest ached. He loved his mom, her warmth, her strength, but he couldn't imagine her hearing this without falling apart. "What happens if you tell her? What happens to us?" David's eyes glistened. "I don't know. But I can't keep living a lie. And I don't want you to start." He reached out, hesitating before resting a hand on Elliot's arm. "You're braver than I was at your age. Whatever you're feeling, whoever you're becoming, to bury it." The words hit hard. Elliot thought of Jamie, of the way his laugh lit up a room, of the way his own heart betrayed him every time they were close. He'd spent months denying it, telling himself it was just a phase. But his dad's confession had ripped that excuse away. "What if I'm not ready?" he whispered. "Then take your time," David said. "But don't wait as long as I did." The conversation was cut short by the sound of Sarah's car in the driveway. David's hand dropped, and he stood, busying himself with the dishes. Elliot shoved the letter back into his pocket, his heart pounding. Sarah walked in, her church dress bright against the gray morning, and smiled. "You two are up early, plotting breakfast without me." Elliot forced a grin, but it felt like a lie. The rest of the day was a blur of normalcy: lunch, chores, a football game on TV, but every moment was laced with tension. Elliot caught his dad stealing glances at Sarah, his face a mix of love and guilt. It was unbearable. That afternoon, Elliot met Jamie at the park. The air was crisp, leaves crunching under their sneakers as they walked. Jamie was quieter than usual, sensing Elliot's mood. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" he asked, stopping by a bench. Elliot's throat tightened. He wanted to confess everything, his dad's secret, his own feelings, but fear held him back. "It's complicated," he said, kicking a pebble. "Family stuff. Big stuff." Jamie sat on the bench, patting the spot beside him. "I'm not going anywhere. Elliot, you don't have to carry it alone." The words broke something in Elliot. He sat, his hands trembling. What if I told you something about me? Something big." His voice was barely audible, but Jamie's eyes locked onto his, steady and warm. "Then I'd listen," Jamie said simply. "And I'd still be here." Elliot's heart raced. He wanted to say it, "I am gay. I think I love you," but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he leaned closer, their shoulders brushing. Jamie didn't pull away, and for a moment, the world felt safe. But the weight of his dad's secret, of his mom's ignorance, loomed large. Elliot knew he couldn't stay silent forever, not about himself, not about his dad. The truth was coming, whether they were ready or not. Monday at school was a haze. Elliot sat through classes, his mind replaying his dad's letter, Jamie's touch, the ticking clock of his family's unraveling. By lunch, he couldn't take it anymore. He found Jamie in the courtyard, sitting under a tree with his sketchbook. The sight of him focused, oblivious to the chaos in Elliot's, had made his chest ache. "Hey," Elliot said, sitting beside him. Jamie looked up, his smile soft but curious. "You okay? You've been weird all week." Elliot took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something." The words felt like stepping off a cliff. "It's about my dad. And me." He hesitated, his heart pounding. "My dad's gay. He told me a few nights ago. He's been hiding it his whole life." Jamie's eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt. Elliot kept going, the words spilling out. "He wrote this letter about how he loved someone before my mom, a guy named Michael. He's scared to tell her, and I'm scared for him. And I'm scared because..." He stopped, his throat tight. "Because I think I might be gay too." The silence that followed was deafening. Jamie set his sketchbook down, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached for Elliot's hand. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his voice steady. "I'm proud of you." Elliot's eyes burned. "You're not." Weirded out. Jamie laughed softly. "Dude, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you I like you for months." His cheeks flushed, but his grip on Elliot's hand tightened. "I didn't know how you'd take it." The world tilted. Elliot stared at Jamie, his best friend, his maybe something more, and felt a rush of relief and terror. "You like me?" he whispered. "Yeah," Jamie said, his smile shy. "A lot." They sat there, hands clasped, the courtyard fading away. For the first time in days, Elliot felt like he could breathe. But the moment was fleeting. His phone buzzed with a text from his mom. "Dinner at 6. Bring your appetite." The normalcy of it stung. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. That evening, dinner was tense. Sarah chatted about her day, oblivious to the undercurrent of secrecy. David was quieter than usual, his eyes darting to Elliot. After dishes, Elliot followed his dad to the garage, where David was tinkering with an old radio. "We need to talk about Mom," Elliot said, his voice firm. "You can't keep this from her forever." David sighed, setting down his tools. "I know. But every time I try, I see her face, and I can't do it. She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve a lie either, Elliot said, surprising himself with his conviction. And neither do you. David's eyes glistened. You're right. I need time. He paused, studying Elliot. You seem different today. Lighter. Elliot hesitated, then smiled. I told Jamie. About me. And he likes me back. David's face lit up. A rare, genuine smile. That's my boy, he said, pulling Elliot into a hug. It was the first time in years they'd embraced like that, and it felt like a promisea new kind of bond, forged in truth. The next few days were a tightrope walk. Elliot and Jamie were tentative, their new confession a fragile thing. They stole moments at school, brushing hands in the hallway, lingering glances during lunch, but Elliot couldn't shake the weight of his dad's secret. Every time he saw his mom, guilt gnawed at him. She deserved to know, but he couldn't betray his dad. At home, David was trying. He was more present, helping Sarah with chores, laughing at her jokes. But Elliot saw the strain in his eyes. One night, as they washed dishes together, David spoke softly. I'm going to tell her. This weekend. I just need to find the right moment. Elliot nodded, his stomach twisting. What if she hates you? David's hands stilled in the soapy water. Then I'll live with it. But I can't live with this anymore. He looked at Elliot, his expression fierce. Promise me you won't make my mistakes. Be honest with Jamie. Be honest with yourself. Elliot promised, but the words felt heavy. He was still figuring out what honesty meant, especially when it came to his mom. He spent the week with Jamie, their connection growing stronger. One afternoon, they kissed behind the bleachers, quick and nervous, and Elliot felt like he was flying. But the high didn't last. Home was a reminder of the storm waiting to break. Saturday came too fast. Sarah planned a family dinner, her way of keeping them close. The table was set with her favorite blue plates, the smell of lasagna filling the house. Elliot's heart raced as he watched his parents. David was quiet, his hands fidgeting. Sarah noticed, her brow furrowing. David, you okay? You've been off all week. Elliot held his breath. This was it. David opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the doorbell rang. Sarah frowned, wiping her hands on a napkin. Who's that? She opened the door to find a man standing there tall, with salt and pepper hair and a hesitant smile. Sarah, he said, his voice familiar yet foreign. It's Michael. Elliot's blood ran cold. Michael, the man from the letter. David's face went white, his fork clattering to the plate. Sarah's smile faltered. Michael. From college. She turned to David, confused. What's he doing here? Michael stepped inside, his eyes locked on David. I was in town. I needed to see you. His voice was thick with emotion, and Elliot saw it history. The love. The pain. David stood, his chair scraping the floor. Sarah, we need to talk. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. Elliot's heart pounded as he realized the moment of truth had come. Unbidden. Unstoppable. The dining room felt like a battlefield, the air thick with unspoken words. Sarah's eyes darted between David and Michael, her confusion morphing into suspicion. What's going on? She asked, her voice sharp. Elliot gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. David took a shaky breath. Sarah, sit down. Please. His tone was gentle but firm, and she obeyed, her face pale. Michael stood awkwardly by the door, his presence a catalyst for the truth. I've been lying to you, David began, his voice breaking. For years. Before we met, I was in love with Michael. I'm gay. The words landed like a bomb. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. What? She whispered, her voice trembling. David, what are you saying? Elliot's heart ached as he watched his mom's world crumble. David reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I love you, Sarah, he said, tears streaming down his face. I always have, but I've been hiding who I am. I can't do it anymore. Michael spoke, his voice soft. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I heard you were still in Virginia, and I couldn't stay away. He looked at David, his eyes full of regret. I'm sorry. Sarah stood, her chair tipping over. You knew. She spat at David. All these years. You knew. And you let me believe. Her voice broke, and she ran from the room, the slam of the bedroom door echoing through the house. Elliot wanted to follow her, to comfort her, but his feet wouldn't move. David sank into his chair, his face in his hands. Michael hesitated, then placed a hand on David's shoulder. I shouldn't have come, he said, his voice heavy. No, David said, looking up. You gave me the push I needed. He turned to Elliot, his eyes pleading. Go to her. Please. Elliot nodded, his throat tight. He found his mom in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, sobbing. Mom, he said, kneeling beside her. I'm sorry. She looked at him, her eyes red. Did you know? She asked, her voice small. Elliot nodded, guilt twisting in his gut. He told me a few days ago. I didn't know how to tell you. Sarah's sobs grew louder, and she pulled Elliot into a hug. I don't understand, she whispered. How could he do this to us? Elliot held her, his own tears falling. He loves you, Mom. He's been hurting too. They sat like that for what felt like hours, the house silent except for Sarah's quiet sobs. Downstairs, David and Michael talked in hushed tones, their voices a distant murmur. Elliot knew nothing would be the same. But in that moment, holding his mom, he felt a flicker of hope. They could survive this together. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling. Sarah moved to the guest room, her silence louder than any argument. David tried to talk to her, but she wasn't ready. Elliot watched his parents navigate their pain, each conversation a fragile bridge over a chasm of hurt. But there were moments of grace, Sarah's hand brushing David's at breakfast, a shared laugh over an old memory. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Elliot found solace in Jamie. They were official now. Their relationship a quiet rebellion against the chaos at home. Jamie's house became a refuge, his parents welcoming Elliot with open arms. One night, as they lay on Jamie's bed, listening to music, Elliot told him everything. Michael, the letter, his mom's heartbreak. Jamie listened, his hand in Elliot's. And when he spoke, his words were steady. You're not alone in this. We'll figure it out. At school, rumors swirled. Someone had overheard Elliot and Jamie, and whispers followed them in the halls. But Elliot didn't care. He held Jamie's hand, his chin high, daring anyone to say something. His dad's courage had given him his own. One evening, Sarah called a family meeting. She sat across from David, her eyes tired but clear. I don't know if I can stay, she said, her voice steady. But I don't want to hate you, and I don't want to lose our family. David nodded, tears in his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, he said. I love you, Sarah, and I love Elliot. I just want us to be honest. Elliot spoke up, his voice trembling. I'm gay too, Mom. And I'm with Jamie. The words were easier now, buoyed by his dad's truth. Sarah's eyes widened, but she reached for his hand, squeezing it tight. I need time, she said, looking at both of them. But I love you. Both of you. It wasn't a happy ending. Not yet. But it was a beginning. David started therapy, working through decades of shame. Sarah joined a support group, finding strength in other stories. Elliot and Jamie grew closer, their love a light in the darkness. The house was quieter now, but it was honest. And in that honesty, they found a new kind of family, one built on truth, resilience, and love that refused to break.